And today I want to talk about what is your primary occupation in your life? And before I get into this, let's just sit with this question for a moment. So, again, sit comfortably, spread your awareness throughout the whole body, and drop in this question. What is your primary occupation in your life, in your whole life? What are you working at? What is the mind preoccupied with? What are you here to do? What are you doing with your life? It's a deep question. It's kind of like asking, who are you? Why are you here? And the quick sort of impulsive response might be, oh well, I work at this company, so and so, and I do this, and this is my field. I studied engineering or law or medicine or whatever it might be, business. But if we kind of expand the question, you'll remember a time before you did that. You'll remember being a child, and what was your occupation then? But really what I'm trying to get at is, can we be purposeful with this? And, from a Taoist perspective, each of us may have sort of these, there's something called the 9 heart palaces in Taoism. And so these are these 9 areas that are really important for all human beings. And depending on who you are and sort of what element you are. And in Taoism, there's something called the 5 elements. But anyway, depending on your particularities and your uniqueness, there may be certain areas that are more important to you. So for example, the wood element is really inclined towards the health palace and the wealth palace. So health and wealth. And there are many others. Again, there's 9 in total. So for some, it might be wisdom and creativity. For others, it might be travel, this idea of globalness. Some people are really preoccupied with the world, how the world is doing. Anyway, I don't want to get too far into that. But we all might have areas in life that are really important. It could be home and family. But from a Buddhist perspective, as well as from a Taoist perspective, there's this other area, and you'll see this actually across any spiritual tradition, I think. There's this other area of self-cultivation. Bhavana is the ancient Pali word for this, cultivation, cultivating the mind. And, when I look at my life, there's been stretches of time where maybe my primary preoccupation was one thing or another, right? I remember being very young, and getting a girlfriend was the primary preoccupation, or finding friends at school. And then maybe a phase of figuring out what career I wanted to have. And phases of going through financial difficulty, and so trying to stay afloat financially. That was the primary preoccupation. Or maybe I was going through a health crisis, and then that became the primary preoccupation, right? So I can think about all these different phases. But when I take a step back, what has always been there throughout every phase was this preoccupation or this occupation of tending to my heart, my chitta, the heart or the mind. This primary occupation of lessening suffering, trying to find my way out of suffering, out of the fog of stress and dissatisfaction, and into the clarity of peace, of well-being. And this is what it means to be a Dharma practitioner, to be a meditator, to be a student of the Buddha's teachings. And my guess is if you're here, if you're starting to incline towards the meditative path, you have this in you as well. There's something in you that wants to be well, that wants to be free from mental disturbances, and so my intention here is to see if you're interested in bringing in and just recognizing that occupation. It's like having a job. Do you recognize that, and can you recognize the importance of that? So like if I'm coaching someone who's really inclined towards health and wealth, I'll phrase this as, let's throw in a third area. We'll call it tending to your heart, or cultivating the mind, or destroying suffering, or developing freedom, developing well-being, whatever phrase, however you want to talk about it, right? If I'm talking to someone who's really inclined towards home and family, I'll say, okay, let's throw in another one. Bhavana, cultivation. And this is the occupation or area that is it's kind of the secret. It's like the special sauce. This is where the magic happens. When we focus and start to invest our time and energy in this area, it helps everything else. Okay? Because we're tending to the mind, and our entire life is experienced by the mind, or through the mind, or in the mind. Mind is the forerunner. Mind is the master, the maker. So when we tend to the mind, everything else gets taken care of. We become better at health or wealth or family or travel or creativity or wisdom or prosperity. It's like if someone wants to get healthy, let's say they want to, maybe lose some weight or strengthen their muscles, or, whatever it is, but they keep eating junk food, or they lose if they get into a gym sort of habit where they go to the gym for a few weeks or even a couple months, and then they lose it, right? But if we're taking care of the mind, we'll be able to really understand why we're doing those things. We'll gain the agency, the ability to stop doing things that are harmful. If we don't take care of the mind, we tend to stay in those habitual, those habit structures. The other point here is that for many of these areas that we focus on deeply, they're sort of like lifetime areas. They're curriculums that we need to learn through a lifetime. You know, it can take, for most of us, let's say we're trying to get healthy. Yeah, maybe in a year or 2 years we can get super healthy, but before that it took a decade, 2 decades to get ready for that 1 year or 2 years. Same thing when it comes to finances. You know, these are, or whatever it is, these take a lot of time. So the other point here is, throughout that time span, if you're focusing on developing yourself, your heart, your mind, you're making incremental improvements throughout that whole time. So, for a lot of people, they think it's a binary thing. It's like, either I'm going to focus on my spiritual advancement or I'm going to focus on my career. Either I'm going to focus on my meditation practice or I'm going to focus on my relationship. And that's really not how I've done it, and that's not what I recommend. We can do all of these things together. So what I'm encouraging here essentially is for us to increase the importance of this area of occupation, of tending to the heart, developing the mind, cultivating oneself. And really I'm asking, it's like, can you make this an occupation that you hold on to for the rest of your life? So take a moment now, spread your awareness throughout your whole body. Really feel your presence, your aliveness here, your chi, your energy, your life force. So just feel your whole body and notice that you are alive. There's warmth in the body, there's energy, there's vibration, there's breathing throughout the whole body. Right? There's oxygen coming in and suffusing with the blood, and then the heart is pumping the blood throughout the whole body. Just feel how alive you are. Feel your vitality. And as you're doing that, how does it feel when you think about this notion of bhavana, or cultivation? So I'll talk a little bit about this. It's as if your heart, your chitta, your mind, is a plot of land. And on this plot of land, there are weeds that pop up over time, constantly. And we can think of weeds like things like feeling like you're not enough, this unskillful desire where you're feeling a lacking. This is what's called the first hindrance. There's also the second hindrance, this weed of aversion. When we don't like something, when we want to push it away out of fear or hatred or anger or boredom. That's the second hindrance. And there's the third hindrance of dullness, stagnation, lethargy, sleepiness, drowsiness, numbness, depression, heaviness. And then there's the fourth hindrance, which is the opposite of the third. There's the overactivity, when the energy is dialed too high. Compulsion, agitation, worry, overthinking. And then lastly, there's the fifth hindrance of paralytic doubt, anxiety, doubting oneself, doubting the unfolding of one's life, doubting the teachings from wisdom traditions, lack of confidence, again, anxiety, paralysis. So part of this work of cultivation is weeding those things out. When the weed appears, the wise gardener pulls it out from the root. And then the other side of cultivation is planting seeds and developing seeds of beautiful flowers and fruit trees that grow big and tall and bear fruit and give us shade and shelter from the storms. Plants like mindfulness, awareness, virtue, to be skilled in goodness, kindness, love, compassion, appreciation, gratitude, equanimity, balance, steadiness, peacefulness, determination, patience, nobility, dignity, skill, freedom, to be free, to move through our lives like a fish moving through water, or a bird flying through the sky effortlessly, full of ease, confidence, strength. How does the body respond when I speak like this? Can you feel how this occupation of cultivation, can you feel how uplifting that is? Even the notion of it is uplifting. What might it feel like to take this on as the primary occupation of your life? To make your life about this? What might it feel like? And again, I'm not saying you give up your career or your family or anything. I'm saying that if you take this up, you'll get better at those things. Because one of the things we're cultivating here is skill. It's called skillfulness. We're actually becoming more skillful. In particular, we're becoming more skillful at defeating suffering and defeating the agents of suffering. And we're becoming more skillful at developing qualities of the mind and the heart that lead us away from suffering and lead us towards joy, happiness, peace, love. Now, I find for myself, it's not that I take up this occupation and every minute of every day is focused on this, at least not for me. Because that can feel too heavy at times. I can do that for a stretch of time. But I find for myself, if I put too much pressure on that, it starts to feel difficult for me personally. I'm not saying you shouldn't do that. If you can, I think that would be awesome, But for myself, what feels really healthy and just right is to take this as the primary occupation, but to engage in it when I feel that I can. And for me, that is every day. It's probably most waking hours, but it's not every minute. And really, it's more like, and I'm talking about myself, not to just talk about myself. I'm just trying to kind of be as practical and transparent as possible, and I think this will be helpful for many. So for me, it's like there's a sensitivity to when I suffer. And the more you meditate, the more sensitive you become. And you'll notice that suffering arises frequently and often, sometimes very subtly. Sometimes it's gross and obvious, but other times it's very subtle. But we're able to pick up on it. So there's a sensitivity to suffering, and when suffering arises, as quickly as I can, I don't point the finger out there. It's not that I'm suffering because, I don't have enough of this, or I need more of that, or that person said this, or whatever. I'm suffering because of this. There's something within me, in the heart, that is participating in this suffering, that is actually making this suffering. So one of the ways that I practice is I practice when I suffer. It's not that every time I suffer I get into a meditative posture and I meditate. Sometimes I do. But often it's more that I'm bringing to mind the teachings of the Buddha, or this deep Dharma. And I'm allowing that to contextualize the suffering. And I'm using different tools, different skills that I've learned. I might even repeat a certain phrase or teaching in my mind. I might spread my awareness throughout the whole body, really open to the suffering, allow it to come in and allow myself to feel it fully. There's so many different tools, right? So, in today's session here, I'm saying all this, and I'm hoping that you can just ask this question to yourself. Do I want to take up this task, this occupation? And do I want this to be there through my whole life? It's like when you take up your career, it's like you probably don't want to do that for your whole life. You probably want to retire at some point. But if you become a parent, that's something you take on for your whole life, hopefully. If your children can be there for your whole life, that's what you would want, right? So it's kind of like that. We're entering into a lifelong commitment, one that is beautiful and contextualizes our whole lives. It's so lovely to have a life that is about this. It's a blessing. It's something that you want to protect because you cherish it. You see its preciousness. And at the same time, it protects you. And this is something that I believe the Buddha said, if you protect the Dhamma protects you. So I offer this for your reflection.